Good morning again. Thank you for coming this morning. So we're going to be revived as we learn things today again. I understand you've been having revive programs here in this church and the hall, and many of you have been coming. Today I thought we would talk a bit more to you about health, what you may have been learning already over the many sessions you've had. Today we'll talk a bit about gut microbiome. Have you heard of gut microbiome? Okay. We'll keep it very simple, okay? I'll give you scientific evidence that you can look up. We don't have time to go through everything, but you can go look it up. It's all out there in the internet. Dr. Google is really good. He gives me a lot of grief with all my patients coming and telling me how I need to treat them and what their problem is. But it's good too because you can get a lot of information up there. It's an age of technology and prosperity, yes? We are becoming prosperous in our girth as well. And diseases of prosperity are ischemic heart disease, hypertension, diabetes, autoimmune diseases. They're on the rise. And we find that many of these diseases were unheard of. And even today in many of the societies out there which are not so advanced like we are, they don't have these problems. You know, I worked in India as a doctor, out in the villages. We didn't have people with diabetes and hypertension. But now, as times have progressed, more and more people have become prosperous. And as they become prosperous, they eat more and more rich Western diet. And the incidence of diabetes is just booming. If you want to make money, become a doctor and go to India to treat people with diabetes, you'll make a lot of money. You'll have lots and lots of people coming in. Is there a unifying cause? Is there any particular reason why diseases are getting worse over time? So we have obesity, childhood obesity, diabetes, which we thought would happen only after you're 40 or 50. We're finding children with type 2 diabetes, which is a non-insulin diabetes, even in teenagers now because of obesity epidemics. We have heart attacks going up. You know what a health cost is? For the past 7-8 years, in Invercargill where I work, in our church, along with a few of my friends, we've been doing health seminars. And I would have to prepare lectures like this, and I would look up at the health budget every time. And over the past 6-7 years, it started off around 2012 with a budget of about $12 billion. It's now gone up to $17 or $18 billion in New Zealand, by the way, yes? That's a lot of money, which could be used for some other cause, isn't it? We have poverty issues. We've got so many issues in this country. So much of money, and still, we are not getting any healthier, are we? We're not. So I tell my patients, you need to take ownership of your health. You need to take steps to prevent from getting unwell. So are these causes because of sedentary lifestyle? Could it be antibiotics? There's a big hoo-ha about antibiotics, by the way. Hygiene hypothesis, you know what that is? We are cleaning ourselves so much all the time, we are killing off a lot of bugs which may actually be helpful for us. And some of these chemicals are causing us harm as we inhale them, as we put it onto our skin. And then chemicals, of course, we're using all kinds of detergents and this and that, and everywhere clean, yes? Which is good. But we have cleaned ourselves too much, it seems like. Radiation. Just the previous session, we were talking about how we're finding that fish out in the sea, because of radiation issues, are getting more and more unhealthy and not fit for consumption. And change in diet. This has been a huge issue. We don't eat the way we used to eat many years ago. Yes, we have changed completely. Everything comes in a nice foil packet. We just go to the supermarket, take it out, open, fast, ready, and gone. Yes, we don't know how to cook. Gut microbiome. Let's talk a bit about that. Now, I'm going to keep it very simple so all of us get an idea, and then you can go back and look up more. And I must tell you that this is a relatively new field that is coming up. Okay, past 15 years or so, it's just booming. Researchers are doing more and more stuff on this, and they are just astounded by the information that's coming through. So what is gut microbiome? It is the bacteria, to put it simply, which is there in our gut. Now, we have bacteria all over us, okay, on our skin, in our mouths, inside our gut, all right? Especially the large intestine. It's full of bacteria. There was a time we thought that bacteria in our gut, in our body, is bad. We need to get rid of them. But now we realize that is not very true. So our intestine is home to approximately 100 trillion bacteria. Now, if you're trying to figure out what is 100 trillion, if you count one bacteria, let's say you want to say hello to every bacteria in your gut. You take 1 second to do that, okay? Hello, hello, hello. You would take 12 days to count 1 million of them. For 1 billion, you would take 31 years to count. And to count 100 trillion bacteria, you would take 3 million years. That's many bacteria you've got in your gut. There are more microbes in a single teaspoon of intestinal content than there are stars in our Milky Way galaxy. Do you know how many stars are there? I want to ask you. So are they friend or are they your foe? We are finding out that they are actually very helpful. You see, nowadays we have the system, right? It's getting things done in New Zealand, labor is quite expensive. So what do? When you call, to get some service, hello, sir, how can I help you? Someone from India has just spoken, yes? We have outsourced things, haven't we? We have. Sorry, I'm an Indian, so. We have outsourced our work. This is what our body has done. It can't do many of the jobs. So it lets the bacteria break down some of the food and produce chemicals which we need. And we then take those chemicals into us and use them. So if the bacteria is not there, then we can't have those chemicals which we need for our well-being, for our immune system, for our health, mental health too, okay? Now, this was an interesting study. This set things off. In the hospital, because we give so much of antibiotics, you can get a problem called as C. diff. Have you heard of C. diff? What happens is, because of the bacteria the antibiotic that you've taken in, it has destroyed not just the bad bug that is causing you the problem, but all the good bug that is in your gut. And when it does that, some of the bad bugs start multiplying without control. So in our gut, we have different kinds of bacteria. You know how in the world you've got different nations, different ethnicities, different groups of people, the black and the white and the Chinese, the red, and so on, you see? Like that bacteria, there are so many types of bacteria in our gut. And when you take the antibiotics, it destroys quite a few of them. And some ones, which are really the baddies, they grow and they cross C. diff, so severe diarrhea that doesn't respond sometimes to antibiotics. So what they did was they transplanted the bowel contents. I'm trying to be polite here, not to offend any of you. Bowel contents, you know what I mean, into the donor. And they found that they were cured of the C. diff problem. Okay, so good bacteria from the bowel of a healthy person was put into someone who was unwell. And this bacteria was like a seed put in there. And this bacteria would multiply and repopulate. And so the problem was gone. You see how clever that is? So instead of the antibiotic, now we are doing fecal transplants. But the question now that we are facing is, who is a healthy donor? What is a healthy content? So I can look at someone and say he's healthy or not, roughly. I can check someone's blood pressure, sugar levels. I can check the blood contents of sodium, potassium, and so on and so forth. I can do a scan and an X-ray, I can find out. But the gut content, how do we decide what is normal and what is not? Because there's such a big variability. All of us have different bacteria in us. When I say different, I mean different proportions. Okay, different kinds of bacteria within us. It's almost like a fingerprint, all of us. And that's where we're coming to now, where you can actually get fingerprinted, if I can put it that way, your gut bacteria, which will be your identity almost. But things get even more complicated because this keeps changing with what you eat. Okay? When you change your diet, the contents of your gut, the bacteria, the proportions and all that change. Certain kinds of bacteria love a certain kinds of food. Some others like some other kinds of food. So things keep changing. So when they did this on this person who was the person who had the C. diff problem, she was a lean person. So they took some bacteria from a well-nourished person. Again, I'm being polite. And what happened was that the person who was lean now started putting on weight. And so they asked what was happening here. Is the bacteria in any way involved with this? So they did some experiments in the lab, and they took mice which were made germ-free. Okay, they were growing them in the labs. And they put bacteria from large persons into this mice. And they put the bacteria from lean person into some other mice. And that was the experiment. And they found that those mice which are getting bacteria from larger persons with the same diet were growing larger. So the question being asked was, has the bacteria something to do with this? Is it that the bacteria is breaking down the food in such a way that it's getting absorbed more, better, or is it changing the way we metabolize our food in our body? Interesting things, aren't they? Very interesting. So people say, oh, look, if I'm not healthy, or if I'm large in size and well-nourished, not my fault, is the bacteria. Well, not quite there. Don't stop at that. What matters is what you eat. That's where we're coming to. So does the gut microbiome determine obesity and chronic disease? Can we treat diseases by changing gut microbiome? And that is an exciting field. It almost looks like in a few years we'll be popping pills containing bacteria from our intestines, or rather someone's intestine who's supposed to be healthy, to treat our diseases. So that's how we're getting, and it seems like science is going in that direction. What do we do in terms of Western medicine when we want to cure or treat? Acute problems, you go to emergency department. You get it sorted, right? We're pretty good at that. But we are very bad at putting fences. So if people keep falling down a cliff, what would you do? Put a fence, right? Stop them from falling. But we seem to be making hospitals below the cliff so that we can treat them after they've fallen and broken their bones, yeah? Or having ambulances right down there. That is not the way we need to go. So we treat symptoms and not the cause. And so this is the research that's going through. In the gut, we have bacteria, viruses, fungi, protozoa, and parasites. But just to make things simple, we say bacteria. Every time I'm talking about microbiome, I'm meaning bacteria here. The largest amounts of microorganisms are found within the colon, as we had said. So the composition of the gut microbiota is unique to each individual, just like our fingerprints. And we have 10 times as many cells in our colon, bacteria, than we have in our body. So actually, we have more bacteria than our cells, if I can put it that way. There are more than 3 million microbial genes, and we have about 150 times more genes from the bacteria than our own genes in our body. More than 1,000 different known bacterial species. This is known, okay? We are still exploring this frontier. We still don't know how many more bacteria. Are we fearfully and wonderfully made by God? Isn't it amazing? It helps the body to digest certain foods that the stomach and small intestine have not been able to digest. So that's why when you don't have good bacteria, you can't digest many important things that's coming into your body. It helps with the production of some vitamins. It helps us combat aggression from other microorganisms. What that means is if the baddies come in, these bacteria in our body fight them. Okay, they prevent them from taking over. Maintaining a wholeness of the intestinal mucosa. So that is, the intestine is covered, like how your mouth is covered by a mucous membrane. We can feel it, the soft, slippery stuff. It's all through in your gut, going through, okay? So that needs protection. It plays an important part in the role of immune system and also as a barrier effect, okay? It stops from diseases entering into your body. So it's virtually like an organ that you're not born with, but at the time of birth, you start getting this bacteria which starts becoming an organ almost that works for you. It produces thousands of metabolites. Metabolites means broken down products, which are then important to help us function efficiently. And it is very important for our fitness and health. So how do we get the microbiomes? When we are born, we have the birth passage through which we come, and it is rich with bacteria. And as the baby is born through, how things happen, I won't get into that. Lots of bacteria comes into the baby. The baby comes in contact with the bacteria and gets all the stuff from the mother. You know what we inherit the most from our mother, which is precious, is all these germs, these bacteria, which are necessary for us to live healthy. And that's why we're finding babies, they're finding through research now, who are born through cesarean sections have issues. We'll come to that. And this was a study that said the maternal infant microbiome, consideration for labor and birth, and they're saying that there could be a huge difference. Some studies are coming, there's a difference in the profile of a newborn vaginally born compared to those who are born by cesarean. Those born vaginally seem to be doing better in terms of fighting infections. And even later on in life, I read somewhere that obesity is related to that as well. Those born naturally are much healthier, and those who are born by cesarean seem to be going in for more obesity problems. And also antibiotic given to the mother during births makes a big difference because it kills off a lot of bacteria, and then the baby doesn't get them. And then another one, I'm just giving you one or two studies here, by the way. There are hundreds of studies coming through, okay? So it's just to give you an idea. I'm just touching the tip of the iceberg today. What about breastfeeding? Look at this. Exclusively breastfeeding in the first 6 months of life provides a multitude of health benefits. For example, exclusively breastfeeding has been shown, so EBF means exclusively breastfeeding, has been shown to be strongly protective against diarrhea, morbidity means illnesses, and mortality, which means death, and decreases long-term risk of diabetes and obesity as compared to non-exclusively breastfeeding or formula-fed infants. Did you get that? Is it any wonder that we have been advised for years and years and years to breastfeed children, yeah? Shaping the gut microbiota by breastfeeding, this is about allergy. We're finding children who are not breastfed seem to have more issues with allergies, asthma, eczema, and so on. If you want to know more about the role of gut, get a hold of this thing on internet. There's a lot of wonderful information there, okay? Just too hard pressed for time. What does the gut microbiota do? So, the fiber that we eat, this is the non-digestible stuff. We thought we need fiber only to form bulk so we don't get constipated. But no, there's more to it. The bacteria works on these fibers, and these fibers, when broken down, are the ones that gives you chemicals which are then taken into the body to stimulate the immune system. It also goes to your brain to help with your keeping you calm and settled. We find that anxiety, and I'll bring some studies about that, anxiety, depression is related with your diet, and we think it's related to this. You're not having enough fiber-rich food, and so you don't have those chemicals being produced by the bacteria, which is causing your problems, mental health problems too. And this supports the growth of specialist microbes, and they produce something called a short-chain fatty acids. Now, never mind what it is called, but what do these short-chain fatty acids do? They give energy source for the gut cells, okay, the very cells that form the lining of the gut. They get energy there. They can kill colon cancer cells. And this is all research coming through. Colon cancer cells are being killed, okay, by some of the chemicals being produced by the bacteria when it feeds on fiber. It maintains oxygen balance in the gut. It balances the growth of gut microbiota. So if you have more fiber coming in, it's going to have healthy bacteria growing there. It also helps in changing the way we regulate our sugar in our body. So the chemicals produced go into our body, goes and affects the way the liver processes our sugars. So they're asking, could diabetes and the way sugars go up and down be related with what we eat in terms of fiber? We talked all the time about eating food that has low sugar, right? They're saying now if you have fiber, not only does it decrease the sugar absorption in your gut, but it also helps in production of chemicals by these bacteria, which then regulates the way the sugar is changed into something that can be used readily or stored away, okay? Same way with proteins and cholesterol, how they get regulated in your body. They may play a central role in central appetite regulation, lowering diet-induced obesity. So apparently, if you have a lot more fiber, it's going to suppress your hunger centers because you get satiety centers get, stimulated, so you don't want to eat too much. It reduces insulin resistance. You know what insulin resistance is? That's what happens in diabetes type 2. You have insulin, but it's not able to work properly because, we have a lock and key mechanism in our body. So you've got the doors that have to be opened by the lock, so the cells have doors. So through the doors, the glucose has to go into the cell from the blood. Only then can the glucose be used inside the cell. So diabetes is when you have so much sugar in your blood vessels, in your arteries and your veins. The sugar is not able to get into the cells where it can be used. Why can't it get in? Because the insulin that is supposed to open the door so sugar can go in, this insulin can't really open the door. There's something gone wrong, a mismatch. Okay, it's a wrong key. Actually, the key is right, but it's not fitting in. And that's what is resistance, to put simply. So this is mucus layer. So we learned that these bacteria feed on the fiber, and the next thing is the mucus layer. We have the snotty stuff in our nose. We have such things through our mucous membrane, okay? All the secretions and all. It's a protective thing. So in our intestine, the wall is surrounded by this mucus stuff. Okay, I'm not trying to be gross. I'm just trying to give you some explanations. Now, the bacteria feeds on this mucus stuff if there is no fiber. And what would happen as it feeds on the mucus? It eats and eats the mucus and goes closer and closer to the cell wall, yeah? And then it can attack the cell wall. So our friends can become our foe very quickly if we don't give it food. And its food is fiber, okay? That's a word you must not forget today, fiber. So cultivating a healthy gut, are you feeding your microbe right? So this is something from the internet I picked up. Someone was asking a very important question. Are you feeding your microbiomes right? You get fiber. So what's the role of normal gut microbiota? These are all studies coming through from reputed journals, international journals. This is the World Journal of Gastroenterology. Role of normal gut microbiota. Diet continues to be the most important determinant in shaping the composition of diversity and richness, even throughout adulthood. In general, intake of diet rich in fruits, vegetables, and fibers is associated with a higher richness and diversity of the gut microbiota. Individuals. So for the bacteria to grow and have a diversity, now what's diversity? Different types, yeah? If you don't eat a fiber-rich food, then the kinds of bacteria, different kinds of bacteria will decrease. They found that people who live out in the villages, the primitive, as we call them, they're living out things from the earth, roots and plants and, fruits and seeds and nuts. They don't have KFC to go to and Pizza Hut, by the way. So that's all they eat. And they found out that their bacteria, there was a huge diversity, different types of bacteria. But those who live on fast foods, okay, don't feel guilty if I'm talking about KFC and McDonald's and Pizza Hut. I'm just saying our diet has changed, and so has our gut bacteria. It has become very, restricted. It's not as diverse. So what's happening because of that? Our health is being affected. Because there's not enough of those variety of bacteria, we're not getting many of those chemicals we need to have a good influence on our health. And then the role of normal gut microbiota, it says, the study indicates that even very short dietary manipulations can have substantial impact on the gut microbiota. So if you read the whole thing, it says, they did this experiment and they found this research that when people changed their diet, what they ate, say they're having a lot of animal-based foods, and they went to plant-based foods for a few days, that made a change in the gut microbiome. Just that change makes immediate changes taking place. Could what we eat affect our health? You know the answer, but I'll tell you why. And here is some research coming through the gut microbiome and its role in obesity. Obesity and obesity-related metabolic disorders are characterized by specific alterations in the composition and function of the human gut microbiome. Mechanistic studies have indicated that the gastrointestinal microbiota can influence both sides of the energy balance equation, namely as a factor influencing energy utilization from the diet, and as a factor that influences host genes that regulate energy expenditure and storage. Now, let me simplify this. So this is what it means. The gut bacteria, it helps in changing the way we make use of the energy that's coming into us. It also changes the genes that help in regulating how the energy is used in us. Basically, it can alter the way you use the food you eat, okay? And then about atherosclerosis and hypertension. So they're finding out that if your gut microbiota changes, it can have a huge implication for your sugar levels, your cholesterol levels. And I'm going through this a bit quickly. I apologize for want of time, and I don't want to bore you with too much of information. Now, this is really interesting. I'll take a little time on this. This research was done by Caldwell and Essiston. These are very reputable people, and these are doctors, by the way. And they said in this paper saying, coronary artery disease, about it, there's a way to reverse it. Do you know most doctors don't talk about reversal of coronary artery disease? What do we talk about? Oh, you got a heart problem. Let's do an angiogram. And we do an angiogram. Oh, it's blocked. Let's put a stent. You're fixed. Are you? Oh, no. Our stents can be only go down to such a certain size. We can't go smaller and smaller stents. Our blood vessels go so small. You know the tiniest blood vessels we have, the arterioles, you know how small they are? If you take 1 millimeter and chop it up into 1,000 pieces, take 5 parts of that, that will be the diameter of the blood vessel, the tiniest blood vessels that goes to feed your cells. You know what's the size of your red blood cells, an average red blood cell? It's the shape of a donut, you know? It's the shape of a donut, but if you take the diameter of that, you chop 1 millimeter into 1,000 pieces, you take 7 parts of it. That's the size of a red blood cell. So you can see the red blood cell is larger than the diameter of the blood vessels. So how does it go through it? It can squeeze and wiggle and go because of its shape. It's not a spear. It's a donut-shaped one, you see. And so what we're finding is that blood vessels can be tiny, and as they get more and more tiny, obviously you can't stent them. You can only stent the larger blood vessels. Atherosclerosis doesn't affect only the large vessels. It affects throughout. And so what happens is, though we can put stents in large blood vessels and unblock the major vessels around the heart, which supplies the heart, the pericardium, inside that you have the coronary arteries, but we can't unblock the smaller vessels. And this person did an experiment, and he said, let us see what happens. If you make a change in diet, I know how much you can see. You look at your left, the blue one, the top picture you see the arrow there? So the heart has been chopped up, and you can see from top. That's the view. And what you're seeing is the yellow part that you see, the brightened part, that is the left, the ventricle, the left ventricle, okay? That's the one that pumps. That's a muscular part of your heart that pumps it into the aorta. And you find a portion there where the arrow is that doesn't have much of that color because the blood supply there is compromised. This person, after 3 weeks of plant-based diet, you find that color has come back there. Yes? Why has the color come back? Because this is the dye going through now because the blood vessels are functioning again. The atherosclerosis had started to reverse. You can look at the next picture there. You have that white little line. You see a squiggly line. That's the artery. which is blocked. You can see the blocked area. And next to it, you'll find the block area has got unblocked. It is now patent. Yeah? The reason is this person, I think he went on I can't quite see here, but I think it's about 30 weeks of plant-based diet. And that has caused a reversal of their blockage. So can heart disease, coronary heart disease, be reversed? We are saying yes. If you know someone, if you yourself have a problem, turn to a plant-based diet, and your blood vessels will start clearing up. Yeah? Your heart problems will start getting better. You look into forks over knives. If you heard of forks over knives, get in there. You'll have so many research-based evidence there of people having problems whose problems have been reversed. Okay, I've had patients who would come to me and say, look, I don't take any fat. I do take animal products, but I'm so careful that when I take my meat, I drain all the fat off, all that. I cook it in this way and that way. I just take the meat. Is that all right? But she was still having chest pain and angina and issues like that. We're finding through research again now, when you take animal products, what happens is it produces certain chemicals. These chemicals are produced because the bacteria breaks down the meat and works on the meat. And that chemical then produced goes into your body, into the blood vessels, causing inflammation. And that inflammation then results in clotting and damage to the blood vessels. This is a simple way of putting it, okay? And that's how you get angina problems, okay? So even if you purify your meat from all the fat, the meat itself is causing damage. Now, I must tell you something interesting. In New Zealand, something that happened called the Broad Study. Have you heard of that? It was out in the paper. Okay. It was a randomized controlled trial where they used whole food plant-based diet in the community for obesity and for ischemic heart disease or diabetes. And this is what they saw. I don't know how much you can read, but these were patients who were taken from 35 to 70 years old, and they had, this was in a place called Gisborne, and they had some people who had diabetes, and they gave them education. They would change their diet, and they went for a plant-based whole food diet. Now, they were not given the food, they were educated. And they followed them over 6 months, and they found that there was a significant difference in weight loss, significant difference in their sugar control and their blood pressure changes. Have a look at that. This was in New Zealand, right? Done by Kiwis, on Kiwis. And they found a huge change just by changing into a plant-based diet. Have you heard of the Adventist Health Study? Yeah? I can't help but talk about Adventist Health Study every time I talk about health. For one thing, I'm an Adventist. The other thing is the results are astounding. You may wonder, why are we as Adventists so out there about health? Because for the past 150 years, we have believed that we need to move towards plant-based diet, because that is a best diet. And we had a health reformer whose name was Ellen White. And if you're interested in reading about what she had written, we have a free book for you on offer. When we go have our lunch, you'll be given a package with the books. So have a read. If you got any questions, please do come and ask us. We're more than happy to talk with you. And this is what we read in her books. Vegetables, fruits, and grains should compose our diet. Not an ounce of flesh, meat, should enter our stomachs. The eating of flesh is unnatural. 150 years ago, if you said something like that, people will come to shoot you down. Even today, they would do that, okay? But that is what Adventists believed. And they studied them around a place called Loma Linda, where many of them are Adventists and who have special diet, okay? So some of them are vegans, that is, they only use plant-based foods. Some then, eating eggs and milk, dairy products, so they were the vegetarians, as you would call them. Some would have vegetables, fruits, nuts, grains, and fish. And some were non-vegetarian. So you had this spectrum of people that could be studied. And they have very interesting results that came through. And these are some of the results coming through saying, beyond meatless, the health effects of vegan diets, findings from the Adventist cohort. And this is what they wrote. Vegetarian diet confers protection against cardiovascular disease, cardiometabolic risk factors, some cancers, and total mortality. Adventists were living longer, 7 to 10 years longer than the average population in US. Their obesity rates, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular mortality rates were much lower. And this was a BMI that they compared. Those Adventists who were vegans, they were within the normal range. So you know BMI could be between 20 approximately to 25, yeah? They were in the normal range. Those who had dairy products and eggs, they were slightly higher than normal. Okay, so we're not doing too good there, but not terribly bad. But you see non-vegetarians, pretty well nourished. Yes, pretty well nourished. Something to be concerned about. I'll just skip those 3 slides, sorry, for want of time. We're going on to some other factors they found out through the study. Eating legumes are, we'll have a lot of legumes today, by the way, okay, for lunch. So they're chickpeas, dal, you know, all those lentils and so on. They're protective for colon cancer. Eating nuts several times a week reduces the risk of heart attack by up to 50%. Eating wholemeal bread instead of white bread reduces non-fatal heart attacks risk by 45%. Drinking 5 or more glasses of water a day may reduce heart disease by 50%. Simple thing, just drinking water. Men who have a high consumption of tomatoes reduce their risk of prostate cancer by 40%. Drinking soy milk more than once daily may reduce prostate cancer by 70%. Interesting things coming through these studies. Again, from the Ministry of Healing, people are continually eating flesh that is filled with tuberculosis and cancerous germs. Tuberculosis, cancer, and other fatal diseases are thus communicated. Again, we have been following this advice. What's the role of inflammation and the gut microbiome in depression and anxiety? You can look into the study, and they're saying that the study of the gut microbiome has increasingly revealed an important role in modulating brain function and mental health. In this review, we underscore specific pathways and mechanisms by which the gut microbiome can promote the development of mental disorders such as depression and anxiety. Now we are beginning to think, instead of giving people pills for depression, should we change their diet to help their depression? Have you heard of Depression and Anxiety Recovery Program? If you want to know more, do contact Deborah or Carrie if she's here, and she will tell you more. It's a beautiful program. Dr. Nedley talks about how you can change your diet to help with anxiety and depression. Another study here, changing the intestinal microbiota on anxiety symptoms. So they did an experiment, a research where they changed the diet. And they found that people with a change in diet, their anxiety levels had come down just by changing it. Raised BMI. I think I'm running out of time, so I'll skip this because it'll take us a bit of time. We'll go on to fiber. Okay, we talked about fiber. Rich bacterial diversity. You need rich bacterial diversity. And how do you get that? Fiber. Think of a forest. Lush and green and lots of plants. That is where lots of birds and animals and all that grow. That's how you want your intestine to be, okay? Really diverse kinds of bacteria. And for that, you need to feed them, give them fiber. Where do you get fiber, by the way? Animal foods do not have fiber. Did you know that? No fiber. So this doesn't have much fiber. Okay, there's a letters there, but lower bacterial diversity. What does it do? It's like a desert or a forest that has been ravaged. Has been reproducibly observed in people who have inflammatory bowel disease, psoriatic arthritis, type 1, type 2 diabetes, atopic eczema, celiac disease, obesity, arterial stiffness. They find their guts look something like this in terms of their microbiome. And when you change the diet, it's going to turn into a lush green forest. And you will have all those goodies that you need to help you keep fit. So if you want to have a full stomach of vegetables and fruits, you would get about 500 calories. And imagine if you take Just that little bit of cheese or oil, you're getting 500 calories. Not only does it increase your calorie intake by taking animal products, it also kills or gets rid of the good bacteria. So when you take fiber, you're chewing more, you're taking time to eat, all the juices are being released, your stomach starts feeling full, though you have taken very less calorie by eating that. It prevents wide fluctuation of blood glucose levels because the sugars get absorbed slowly. It prevents absorption of carcinogens. It prevents toxin uptake and decreases cholesterol and bile salt uptake as well. So we cannot change our genes, but can change our microbiome, would you say? Yes. Just by changing what you eat. Just by changing what you eat. I think I'll stop here. I'm tiring you out, perhaps. Or do you want to hear about a bit of epigenetics? Okay, very quickly. Okay. There's a song I understand. I've never heard this, but someone told me. I blame it on my DNA. Something runs so deep into my veins that caused me to do all kinds of crazy things, so they're blaming. I used to blame the devil for my evil ways. Now I blame it on my DNA. I've had my patients come and say, oh, look, I got it from it's in my DNA. There was an article that came out, why your DNA isn't your destiny. Research is telling us there's something called as epigenetics. What in the world is that? You know, we have genes, right? You have chromosomes and you have all this spirally thing. I won't get into the scientific details of it. We thought everything mattered, what was in our DNA. We start our life from one cell, and that cell multiplies. And inside that cell, there's a nucleus. In the nucleus is information. It's like a big volume of information, yeah? A user's manual, if you can put it. Our creator has put in there. And that cell, one cell, as it divides, some of those cells go on to become parts of the eye. Some become parts of your intestine. Some become parts of your nose. Some become parts of your fingers from one cell. But why doesn't the eye start turning into a nail? Why doesn't the lips become the nose? Why doesn't? How do these cells know what it should do? All of them have all that same information in them. How do they know? So there's a huge volume, the book to read through. If you're a cell and you want to get the information you need, a quick reference, what would you do? You would put bookmarks, won't you? And that's what happens. Our cells put bookmarks for the information they need to do its function, all its specialized functions. Where those bookmarks come from? They come from the food we eat. If you eat certain kinds of food, rich in fat, rich in cholesterol, animal foods from animal sources, you lack many of these chemicals or goodies that we need to get into our body, which are going to be then used as bookmarks. And if you don't get the right bookmarks, you won't know how to fight cancer. I'm putting it in a very simple term. There's a lot more into it scientifically. So that is all about epigenetics, where these are basically bookmarks, chemicals that highlights areas of your genes that your cells need to know. And if those bookmarks are taken out, your cells get confused. They don't know what to do, and they're not able to manage and fight diseases and cancers. So there's an experiment they did. They found that there's a certain component called the methyl group that comes from certain foods, which are plant-based foods, okay? This methyl group is really important to be bookmarks on the DNA. And they did this experiment on these mouse called the agouti mouse. I wonder if I'm pronouncing it right. All mammals have a gene called agouti. When a mouse's agouti gene is completely unmethylated, or that bookmark is taken off, its coat is yellow. You see a large yellow thing, the mice, and is obese and prone to diabetes and cancer. When the agouti gene is methylated, so that was that little stick that you see, there, yellow stick on the gene. When it is methylated, the coat color is brown and the mouse has a low disease risk. Fat yellow mice and skinny brown mice are genetically identical, so same genes, okay? The fat yellow mice are different because they have an epigenetic mutation, that is, their methyl groups are no longer there, okay? So they did this experiment. When researchers fed pregnant yellow mice, which is the unhealthy ones, okay? They fed them with methyl-rich diet. Most of our pups were brown, and they stayed healthy. These results show that the environment in the womb influences adult health. In other words, our health is not only determined by what we eat, but also what our parents ate. We're beginning to question, why is there so much of issues with our children that are being born? ADHD, have you heard? I keep prescribing medications for ADHD, just about every kid who comes in. They keep bouncing off the wall in my surgery. Yeah, they don't listen to their parent, they listen to me. Sit down, don't move. They listen for 2 seconds. You wonder what's happening. Could it be that the environment they have while they are in their mother's womb is having a huge effect? You see this experiment. This is, of course, in mice and rats and so on. Could it be that it's affecting our children? Methyl-rich diet, where do you get it? Plants and vegetables. DNA loads the gun, someone said. Epigenetics pulls the trigger. There is no substitute for experience. I would challenge you today. Take a 4-week challenge. Get into a plant-based diet. Just 4 weeks. You will live to see another month. 4 weeks challenge. And you'll be thankful you made that change. If you want to know more, you want more help, come ask our leaders here in Ireland. There's another program that I would like to promote here. I think we do that in Ireland here, called the Depression Recovery Program. If you're interested, again, talk to Deborah. Most of you know Deborah. Or if you don't know, ask me and I'll show you. So thank you.